Hi, everybody, and welcome to True Teacher Talk. My name is Michelle, and I am currently an Education Account Manager supporting schools and school districts here at Texthelp. In my prior life, I was an elementary school teacher for over a decade, so I definitely have the inside scoop on what educators face on a daily basis. I'm here today to have real talk with all of you teachers about a pain point we all have experienced and to show you how Texthelp Solutions not only increase student achievement, but also alleviate teacher stress. So today's pain point is the copy machine. I can actually feel my internal temperature rising just thinking about it. I swear my soul would leave my body at the copy machine. But enough of my ranting. Let's take a closer look at why this device can oftentimes be the bane of a teacher's existence. So we have these stressors. Number one for me, when it came to the copy machine, was that it was extremely time consuming. So you would have to have a dedicated block of time each week that you set aside to churn out as many copies as possible. And that was really frustrating because it was time that I could have been using to do much more productive, important things related to my teaching. Don't even get me started on how, without fail, you get to the copy machine. There's either already a line at least 3 people deep, or somebody shows up with one page right when you hit start on a 10-page front to back staple packet for 30 kids. Like there was no middle ground at the copy battle machine royale. And don't even get me started on all the time that then goes into organizing your plethora of papers once you're back in your classroom. It's time consuming. The next thing is those unforeseen technical issues. So no part of my teacher training prepared me for the daily battles I would take on versus the copy machine. I am like a big proponent that there should have been a course on copy machines as part of my undergrad studies. Like we all should have left college dual certified as educators and copy machine technicians. That would have certainly saved us a lot of trouble on a daily basis with those paper jams or no ink or just, meltdowns and lots of buttons and lights blinking. So I would say technical issues were a big stressor for me. The next thing, I don't know if this was just a personal experience, but the school budget. So there was never enough paper to last the year. By February, without fail, the office would send out an email that would be like, hey guys, so we have 5 boxes of paper to last us until the end of the year. But we have plenty of paper towels, if that helps. And it's like, all right, so an entire school has 5 boxes of paper left. How does this work out? So there was always sort of a finite supply of paper. So that would also be stressful. Students do not necessarily have the executive functioning skills that they need to stay super organized and on top of the multitude of papers they're constantly receiving. So it's kind of inevitable that they end up losing the copies you put your blood, sweat, and tears into making. And you have to make extra copies in anticipation of this inevitable daily occurrence, which is super wasteful. And also goes without saying that a never-ending influx of paper leads to quite messy desks and lockers because folders are not always utilized as they should be. Like I heard crunching paper on the daily because, all of those copies were just getting shoved in desks. And then my last point is one that I really hold near and dear, and that is that the more copies you make, the less eco-friendly you are being. I feel like my classroom was almost a fire hazard at times because of all the paper in it. I always felt guilty for, decimating an entire forest for worksheets. If you think about it, sometimes things copy incorrectly. And the guilt is real, it's important to reduce waste. We want to create a sustainable future for the kids that are in front of you. So I think that was a big, important topic for me in terms of my own movement away from relying on paper solely. So, if anything I have said resonates with you, never fear. Texthelp has solutions for that. So, if you're using Google, Microsoft, Mac, no worries. Texthelp has you covered within these platforms, as well as across a variety of learning management systems. So, without further ado, let's check out how you can save Mother Nature and save yourself an existential crisis. So, the first thing, which is probably pretty obvious to you, if you have any sort of inkling of what Texthelp does, is Texthelp's suite of products digitizes teaching and learning. I know from being a teacher that teachers are hesitant to make everything digital, right? Like God only knows what Johnny is doing on the computer in the corner at a site. But at the same time, educators have been tasked with creating 21st century learners that have to be ready for the world they're inheriting. So if there's one positive of the pandemic, and I emphasize one positive of the pandemic, it's that it increased technological resources in schools. You know, like my school went from having a few carts shared to one-to-one. And we really need to just be comfortable diving in and reaping those benefits. Of course, there will be speed bumps along the way. I mean, teaching is speed bumps, teaching equals speed bumps. But if you fully commit to using these solutions, I can assure you they'll really streamline your workflow, they'll strengthen your organization skills, and they'll really increase overall student accountability. Gone are the days of, I can't find it from your students and their crunchy paper desks. You having to, meticulously file things away in folders that you copied off and spending all of your free time at the copier. Digitizing learning allows you to do a lot more from the comfort of your home, which any teacher can agree is a wonderful perk. So we definitely need less of those worksheets and more of these digital versions of those same worksheets. No need to throw away everything you've ever used in your life. You can definitely digitize them or make new resources. So let's see how to make it happen. So we are going to start with a lesser known product from our suite, which is Fluency Tutor for Google. So when I taught 4th and 5th grade, I would essentially have to copy a ream of paper per kid in reading fluency tracking materials. I would have to have a huge stack of booklets that I would grade in. I'd have to have the passages they'd read from, and then assorted practice packets for them to use to strengthen their accuracy, pacing, expression, etc. during center time. Lots of paper, lots of interactions with the copy machine. So if this looks at all familiar to you, this was what fluency looked like for me. There's that booklet that I would have to have, and I'd have to have the kid right in front of me in order to assess it. So fast forward to Fluency Tutor here. You would use Fluency Tutor to select a passage right from it. They have like 500 passages, or you can find a passage from the web, or you can upload a doc or image that you sort of already have and have been using. Share it directly with the student on Google. If you're using Google Classroom, you can share it right there. Students open and use support tools that are built in. Student practices their reading and then submits it. You review and give feedback, and then Fluency Tutor all the while is collecting and reviewing this data. So as you can see, there's absolutely no need to print or copy anything in order to establish the seamless workflow. And what's actually really cool is it takes you out of the equation almost altogether, because once you assign it digitally, the students can take on this task themselves. So copy machine who? Thanks, Fluency Tutor. All right, next up, we will move on to EquatIO. So EquatIO allows teachers to make math and STEM content accessible and digital with ease. And of course, the beautiful part, absolutely no paper required. This product really supports educators in bringing their classrooms and their teaching into the digital age. So I am going to focus on EquatIO as a math teacher's best friend for our time together today. So there are a few different elements to EquatIO. Just giving a general overview, this is not a demo video per se. I would definitely recommend if anything I'm saying strikes your fancy, you should reach out to see a demo and see these tools in action. But just a quick overview. I know teachers are busy, so I don't want to take too long. So MathSpace is EquatIO's digital whiteboard. I know from being in the classroom that setting up a math activity doesn't just require a bunch of copies, but also organizing manipulatives and shared resources, which in this pandemic age, bit icky if I'm being honest. So MathSpace takes care of both of these tasks by allowing teachers to create really engaging learning activities while providing students with the workspace they need and the tools they need all in one dynamic digital environment. So if you look at that example there, we have these coins that are draggable and students could show what they know, as opposed to a worksheet where they might just be drawing it or writing it out. So really, really neat, super dynamic tool. Next, we'll move on to EquatIO Mobile. So I know that actual whiteboards and dry erase markers were a favorite among my students and me because it meant I didn't have to make copies. But the problem with using those was that I couldn't hold students accountable for their work or, assess their progress and understanding since the board would get erased problem to problem. I mean, it was a beautiful reusable tool, but also problematic in that way. So this is where EquatIO Mobile steps in. So students can use those whiteboards to keep track of their math. They can insert it right into a Google Doc by taking a photo, using a mobile device, a tablet, or even their laptop camera. So it is a completely reusable and sustainable way to enable students who want to handwrite, the old-fashioned traditional way, while also holding them accountable within their digital learning environment. What's really cool is when they take a photo, they can decide if they want to insert it, as their handwriting, or if they want to digitize it and it becomes typed. So that's really cool. And then last but not least, EquatIO integrates with many different platforms that students are familiar with, but I'm going to focus on Google Apps. So as we know, paper does not allow for multiple modes of input. There's one choice really, and that is to show what you know via writing or drawing. A hesitant student may freeze and avoid work at all costs when you hand them a photocopy or rip it up, but they may have been a bit more receptive if they were given the option to use, speech to text to explain their thinking, or predictive text in an equation editor to guide them through. So this is really where the magic of EquatIO steps in and shows you how you can advance your math instruction by giving the copy machine a rest. Running off a multi-page math test is never fun, but if you create an assessment on Google Forms using EquatIO, students can do everything right on the computer with the added benefit that they will also have a multitude of math supports built right in to guide them through their solving. Providing students with digital rubrics ensures that the dog can't eat it when their guardians ask what they got on an assignment too. So all of this and more is possible when EquatIO removes the middleman, the copy machine. Our next tool is Read&Write. And Read&Write is known as the Swiss Army knife of tools for educational technology. As you can see, it's a multidimensional, robust toolbar. Provides students with upwards of 20 different supports to access when they're reading, writing, researching, and organizing. What educators may not realize is how helpful Read&Write can be in terms of helping them reduce their carbon footprint. So if we take a look here, Read&Write is our flagship product. I just want to preface this. It truly could have had its own video. So I'm just going to focus on a few of its magical tools that exist within the Google Chrome browser that can lessen a teacher's reliance on physical paper copies. So the first tool I will start with is Simplify. If you're listening to this, you know that teachers are responsible for ensuring that all students can access literary content, which often requires providing differentiated text and copying off stacks of different versions based on student needs and necessary accommodations. With Simplify, your students can take on the role of creating a text that is most comfortable for them, no printing required. When they hit the Simplify button on their Read&Write toolbar, a new tab opens up with the article. They can hit a plus or minus symbol to increase or decrease the length of the text and the amount of images present. The text itself will not be differentiated in terms of difficulty or complexity because all students should have the chance to be exposed to rigorous text and robust ideas. But any visual distractions and extraneous detail will disappear. We'll really whittle it down to those main important concepts. Students can also decide on text color, font size, and line spacing, as you can see in my example there. If you've ever tried to run off text with a bunch of images and different colored fonts on a black and white copy machine, you know the struggle and the sheer amount of ink it takes to do so. Not a concern anymore with Simplify. The next tools I will focus on in tandem are Collect Highlights and Vocabulary List, as both rely on the highlighting function built into the toolbar. We often feel we have to give students tangible resources if we expect them to annotate, highlight, and organize information. That's where Read&Write steps in to say, I got your back. So if you instruct your students to highlight relevant information, they can do so right on the text provided on the internet. Hit Collect Highlights, and their very own personalized Google Doc will appear in a separate window, which they can continue to annotate before passing into you. If students need to clarify word meaning and keep track of it, not a problem. They can highlight the words they're unsure of within the article, hit the vocabulary button, and voila, a personalized list will appear in a separate Google Doc just for them. Even more exciting from the teacher front is that you can follow the same steps to create a digital vocabulary list ahead of time. You can rename any of the categories they give you or, simplify word meanings that are provided, and then easily assign it to your students via your learning management system. See you later, paper prayer models. You're not needed in these parts anymore. Our next product is going to be OrbitNote. You may be thinking, okay, Michelle, but I have a huge binder full of worksheets and resources that I rely on. They're not on the computer, so this video has been useless for me. I ever guide you astray? As long as you have an image or scanned version of your worksheet and save it as a PDF, you're going to be good to go with OrbitNote. OrbitNote allows educators to digitize any reference sheets, note-taking pages, or assignments that they already have, and it turns them into accessible, interactive, collaborative learning resources. And as if it couldn't get any better, OrbitNote integrates seamlessly with Read&Write, EquatIO, and across learning management systems such as Google Classroom. Does it get any better than that? I think not. The copy machine must be shaking in its boots. So let's take a look at OrbitNote in action. As you can see here, this teacher uploaded their traditional, old school exponent worksheet to OrbitNote. OrbitNote worked its OCR scanning magic to make this once flat, image-only doc come to life for students. As you can see, it works in tandem with EquatIO's math editor to allow students to have a space to solve and then insert their answers right onto their digital worksheet. Cool! For all you ELA teachers out there, you can also breathe new life into the worksheets you're used to running off. Simply upload a PDF to OrbitNote, and your students can use all sorts of annotation tools and input options that allow them to interact with the content and exhibit their knowledge. If you have Read&Write, they will also have access to all the literacy tools they need in order to make meaning. As you can see from these examples, if you are a paper copy lifer and you don't want to recreate the wheel, you don't have to. Use what you're comfortable with and transform it for your digital age students using OrbitNote. Wow! So I think it's plain to see that with Texthelp, the copy machine no longer has to be a huge pain point. Did you know that Read&Write and EquatIO are always free for teachers? Crazy, right? In a society where nothing is given for free to teachers, I highly recommend taking advantage of these opportunities to further explore these resources. If you're generally interested after your own foray into these solutions, Texthelp does offer complimentary pilots so you can get your students on board too and see what they think. So, your homework is definitely to reach out to whoever sent you this amazing video so they can demo these solutions for you in real time. We've gone over the why of why these solutions work, but the next step is really exploring how. Seeing these solutions in action is exciting and inspiring. As we know from teaching, it's one thing to be told something, it's a whole other thing to experience something. And you may notice that I've left one of our beloved products off of this video. That was done on purpose. Hey, you gotta add some suspense and curiosity to the mix sometimes to keep your learners on their toes. So on that note, I highly encourage you to reach out to your education account manager or me to learn all about Texthelp's entire suite of solutions in action. Thanks so much for joining me today for True Teacher Talk. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.